So in terms of positioning, I need to figure out data. I need to figure out either qualitative or quantitatively what is it that how I want to position my product in the mind of the customer. So last time we talked about factor analysis, and that's that I come up with, and I can come up with as many as 15 variables, and then I just ask my customers to go ahead and rate it. In terms of this research that I do, what's important? Well, it's about, you're assuming that you have a database, and so I need to figure out statistically how I can get a combination of those descriptors to form a value. And so there are algorithms that will actually pick that out for you. And so different factors are going to have different weights. And so one approach is multidimensional scaling. And what I do is I list out a whole bunch of brands and see what is my product like. For example, JetBlue Airlines. Well, I think JetBlue is kind of like 20% United, 10% Southwest, and 70% Virgin Airlines. That's an example. And so here's an example of what a map looks like. I'm seeing where my competitors are, and what I'm talking about is comfort and convenience and overall service. That's what I'm interested in. So based on those three factors, where do I end up? And so here are the different airlines and where they end up relative to those values. And I left out punctuality. In terms of variables, price is always a difficult one to map out. And the thing is, because customers can always undercut you and become stronger on price. But the preferences are shown in the map. And so preference maps, we talked about product features in the other map. Well, preference maps are what is it that customers like. And so what you can do is you can figure out what it is, again, through poll data. You could come up with vectors to see where is it. The drawback to this approach is, yeah, it'll tell you what your customer preference is, but it won't tell you which way to move in order to get more business. And the last space approach is you put down both your customer and your product preferences. And so the two approaches to coming up with this map is you pick your ideal brand and ask customers to rank against it. Or the average vector model is the attributes are tracked as a vector, and you come up with what's called the preference vector. So here are all the different factors that I'm interested in. So based on all those interested factors, the one that customers are going to like the most is called the preference vector. And so how do you position yourself according to it? Maybe you're not interested in the preference vector. If you look at Sanyo, they position themselves more towards avant-garde. And so, okay, I know a lot of this is really confusing, but what it comes down to is you can take a bunch of different factors, and each of those factors you can draw a line. And so mathematically you could figure out where the optimal point is, where you should exist around these lines. And that's what positioning is about. It's about conceptually, does your customer like you because of your product values, and what is it that they actually prefer? Customers might prefer better battery life or expandability. And that's why the preference vector is so important. And typically they get that by putting out these polls and asking people to rank things. And so through this survey data that you can figure out how to position it. But the biggest thing of all is positioning sets a perception of your product. And so these maps and everything else are just techniques that you can use. And you have to decide whether or not you're going to approach this as bottom up, meaning what is it that the market wants, or what is it that you can push out on the market.